The deep darkness of space was silent, endless, and still. Stars shimmered in the distance like tiny frozen sparks, their light traveling for millions of years just to touch the surface of a metal hull drifting quietly between them. The vessel was not human. It belonged to the Tzkora Collective, an old and advanced civilization that had explored more star systems than they could count. Their ship, the Sarin IV, was a reconnaissance cruiser, fast, silent, and equipped with the best scanners their science could create. Inside, the crew worked calmly. They had been traveling for months through this uncharted region near the edge of the Perseus Arm, a part of the galaxy where no intelligent life had ever been detected. Their mission was simple: explore, map, and report. Commander Enrel, the ship's lead officer, stood before the main viewing panel. Her dark, glass-like eyes reflected the soft light of the monitors. She was calm, as she always was, but her instincts told her something felt different tonight. Report, she said softly. A young technician turned in his seat. Commander, sensors have picked up a large mass ahead. It's not a planet, not an asteroid either. Energy readings are strange, almost alive. Enrel leaned forward. Alive? Do you mean biological? No, not biological, the technician replied. But it's giving off energy signatures like nothing in our database. It's moving. The crew fell silent. For a moment, even the gentle hum of the ship seemed to pause. Something moving in this quiet sector was not expected. The Tzkora were used to finding dust, rocks, and dead planets, not active machines. Enrel straightened her posture. Put it on visual. The screen brightened, and slowly a shape began to appear. At first, it looked like a shadow, a dark object reflecting faint starlight. Then, as their ship drew closer, details became clear. Sharp angles, heavy plating, long weapon mounts, and massive engines. It wasn't an asteroid. It was a ship, and not a small one. The alien crew exchanged worried looks. The unknown vessel was huge, larger than anything the Tzkora Collective had ever built. Its surface was coated with a strange dark alloy that seemed to drink the light instead of reflecting it. Across its hull, faint blue lines glowed in patterns that looked almost like veins under skin. Is it one of ours? Enrel asked. Negative, the technician replied. No registry. No response to our beacon. Another crew member turned around. Commander, its systems are active, but I can't read anything inside. The hull is completely blocking our scans. It's like it's made to hide. That last word, hide, made everyone uneasy. Enrel studied the object for several seconds before finally saying, prepare standard first contact protocols. Open a communication channel. Back aboard the mysterious vessel, deep inside a command bridge lined with glowing consoles. Humans were watching too. The ship was the HMS Valiant, the pride of Earth's new defense fleet, a massive warship designed not for exploration but for protection. Its purpose was to test how far humanity could push its technology into deep space after years of tension and fear following old wars back home. Inside the command deck, Captain Evelyn Drake sat quietly in her chair. Around her, officers worked in near silence. The bridge was dim, lit mostly by blue light from the control panels. Unidentified ship detected, said a crewman. They're approaching slowly, transmitting signals. Looks like greetings, maybe? Drake's eyes narrowed. Language match? None yet. Our AI says it's non-human. First contact. The room went silent. Everyone had trained for this moment, but no one truly believed it would come so soon. Humanity had always wondered if someone else was out there. Now that someone was just a few hundred kilometers away, watching them through the dark. Drake stood. Keep shields active, weapons on standby, but don't target. We don't know their intentions. She moved closer to the main display. The alien vessel was smaller but elegant, moving like it was alive. Its hull shimmered in shifting colors, almost liquid in form. They're curious, Drake murmured, but we don't know if they're friendly. The AI voice echoed softly through the room. Incoming signal, unknown structure. Attempting translation. Static filled the speakers, then strange tones, like a mix of music and speech. The sound was hauntingly beautiful but unreadable. Drake exhaled. Record everything. No response for now. Let's just observe. On the alien ship, the Tzkora waited. Still nothing, said the communications officer. They're not answering, Enrel frowned. Strange. Maybe their systems can't translate. The officer hesitated. Or maybe they're ignoring us. That idea brought a chill through the crew. The Tuscarora had made first contact with dozens of civilizations over the centuries, all of them less advanced. They were used to being the superior race, the ones who guided others toward peace. But this ship was different. Narelle studied the readings again. Any sign of energy weapons? Unclear. But power levels are extreme. I've never seen anything like it. Extreme? The technician swallowed hard. Commander, their main reactor is outputting more energy than our entire fleet combined. The words hung heavy in the air. Narelle took a slow breath. Then we proceed carefully. Keep our shields up. No sudden moves. Her second officer leaned close. If they wanted to attack, they would have by now. And Narelle nodded, though she wasn't sure. Something about that silent, dark warship felt unsettling, not hostile but ancient, as if it carried the weight of battles long past. Meanwhile, aboard the Valiant, tension grew. They're scanning us, said the sensor officer. Low-frequency pulses, non-invasive. Looks like they're trying to study our structure. Let them look, Drake replied calmly. But increase countermeasures. I want our systems unreadable. The AI confirmed. Counter-scanning active. External sensors reporting minimal heat signature from the alien ship. Highly efficient energy system. Drake turned her gaze to the stars. Efficient means advanced. So they're not primitive. Good to know. For a moment, both ships floated silently in space, facing each other like two predators unsure if they should attack or retreat. Back on the Saren 4, the aliens were growing anxious. Their ship just emitted a pulse, shouted one of the engineers. I can't tell what it's doing. It's not a weapon, but our scanners are losing lock. They're jamming us, said another voice, and Rel's eyes narrowed. Are they warning us? Or testing us? Before anyone could respond, the Valiant's hull began to shimmer faintly. Long streaks of blue light ran along its sides as the human warship's defensive systems powered up automatically. To the Tuscarora, it looked like the entire ship had come alive. Energy waves rippled across its armor, forming glowing patterns like breathing light. The alien crew froze. Commander, power surge detected. Their energy field just tripled. Evasive pattern, Narelle ordered instantly. Do not fire, repeat, do not fire. The alien ship rolled away sharply, engines flaring bright green as it changed course. Alarms echoed through the cabin, but aboard the Valiant, no one had fired a thing. Drake stood firm. Status? Defensive grid auto-activated, Captain. No hostile action taken. Alien ship evading. Drake clenched her jaw. Stand down the grid. Last thing we need is a misunderstanding. The blue glow on the warship faded slowly. Returning to silence on the Saren 4, the crew tried to calm their racing hearts. They didn't shoot, one of them whispered, and Rel exhaled slowly. They could have destroyed us in seconds. But they didn't. Her second officer nodded. They showed restraint, and Rel turned back to the dark. Distant ship on her screen, the human warship that now floated silently, almost peacefully, as if waiting. They're not just powerful, she said softly. They're cautious. That makes them even more dangerous. Inside the Valiant, Captain Drake sat again in her chair, her face thoughtful. Log this encounter, she said quietly. Unknown alien vessel. No signs of hostility. Event classified as first contact. The AI confirmed. Log recorded. Recommendation? Drake stared at the alien ship fading slowly into the distance. Hold position. Let them go. We've both seen enough. The bridge returned to silence. Around them, the stars continued to shine. Cold, distant, and unaware of the fragile moment that had just passed. For the first time in history, humanity had been seen by another intelligent species. And the aliens who had found them would return home, shaken, after meeting a warship that moved like a ghost and carried the quiet power of a species that had learned to survive through struggle. The silence between the two ships lasted longer than anyone expected. The stars around them didn't move. The darkness didn't change, and yet both sides felt the weight of something historic. For the aliens, it was the first time they had met a species they couldn't easily read or understand. For the humans, it was proof that they were no longer alone in the universe. Aboard the HMS Valiant, the crew remained at their stations, still tense after the near misfire. The air inside the bridge felt heavier than before. Every light blinked softly. Every screen showed graphs and numbers that didn't make sense yet. The captain stood near the main console, her hands resting calmly on the railing in front of her. Her expression was calm, but her mind was racing. She knew that one wrong move could start something far bigger than anyone on Earth could control. They were hundreds of light years away from home, deep in unknown space with no backup and no rules to guide them through this moment. "Are we still being scanned?" she asked. The communications officer nodded. "Yes, but the signals have slowed down. They're probably trying to understand why we activated our defenses." The captain sighed softly. "They're probably scared." The technician sitting near the radar smiled nervously. "So are we, ma'am." That made her pause. Then quietly she said, "Good. Fear means we still care about surviving." For a moment, no one spoke. The ship hummed quietly around them, like a giant metal heart beating in rhythm with the crew's nerves. Down in the observation deck, a few off-duty officers stared out through the large viewing window, watching the alien vessel. It shimmered faintly with soft green lights that moved across its surface like flowing water. It was beautiful, alive in a way that no human ship had ever looked. One of the younger engineers whispered, "I wonder what they think of us." Another replied, "Probably that we're dangerous." The first one chuckled weakly. They're not wrong. On the alien ship, the atmosphere was just as tense. Commander Enrel stood in front of the main projection, her sharp features lit by the pale glow of the screen. The image of the human warship filled the entire display, a massive dark shape with edges too precise, too sharp. It looked like a weapon carved from the night itself. The commander's voice was calm, but her tone carried the kind of quiet authority that came from years of discipline. "They haven't fired," she said. "They could have easily. Instead, they're just watching." Her second officer, a tall being with silver markings on his skin, nodded slowly. "It's strange. Their design is primitive in some ways. Solid armor, no visible energy fins. But the power output is impossible to measure. It's like their ship runs on controlled chaos." Enrel's eyes narrowed. Chaos. That's a word that fits. She looked again at the readings scrolling across the monitor. Radiation levels, power cores, propulsion patterns, and all beyond their understanding. The Tizkora Collective had explored over 100 civilizations in their time, but none had technology that looked this unstable and yet so precise. "Send another transmission," Enrel ordered. "Simplify it. Maybe our language is too complex for them." The communications team nodded and began adjusting the frequency, turning their message into a series of patterns: light, tone, and pulse. Simple enough that any intelligent being could understand it as peaceful contact. But again, there was no answer. The room grew quiet once more. The crew exchanged uncertain glances. Finally, one young navigator whispered, "Commander, what if they're not ignoring us? What if they're studying us?" Narelle didn't reply at first. Her gaze remained fixed on the massive shadow of the human warship. "Then," she said finally, "I hope they like what they see." Inside the Valiant, the AI broke the silence with a soft tone. "Incoming signal detected. Pattern consistent with non-hostile communication attempt." The captain leaned closer. "Translate." The AI's voice changed slightly as it analyzed the sound. "No known language base. Attempting universal code structure. Message content, unclear. Possible meaning, we seek peace." The captain nodded. Finally, she looked at her crew. "Record and send a response. Short, clear, and calm. Acknowledge their message, but don't reveal our location data or strength." The technician hesitated. What should the message say? "Just 3 words, the captain said quietly. "We understand you." The message was transmitted through a low-frequency pulse, simple, harmless, but powerful in meaning. On the alien ship, alarms didn't ring this time. Instead, every officer turned to the screen in surprise as the translation came through their own system. The message was short, but it reached every corner of the bridge. "We understand you." A silence followed, but it wasn't the heavy kind. It was a silence filled with wonder, curiosity, and something like relief. The commander exhaled slowly. "They understand." Her second officer smiled faintly. "And they didn't threaten us." Enrel looked at the image of the human ship again, this time with new eyes. "They want peace, but they also want to make sure we know how strong they are." She turned toward her team. "Send coordinates for neutral distance. Keep communication open but minimal. Let's see how far they're willing to trust us." Back on the human side, the crew watched as the alien ship adjusted its course. It moved away slightly, positioning itself at a safe but respectful distance. "Looks like they got the message," said the navigation officer. The captain nodded, relieved. "Good, no sudden moves. Let them take the lead." Her eyes softened as she stared at the display. She had seen war before, human war. She had seen what happened when misunderstanding turned to violence. Out here in the silence of space, there was no room for another mistake like that. She thought of Earth, of the crowded cities, the recovering nations, the long scars left by human conflict. People had always feared the unknown, but they had also always reached toward it. Maybe this time they could do better. On the alien ship, a group of scientists began to analyze the short human message. The patterns were clean, structured, not random. They were surprised by how simple and direct it was. Most civilizations tried to impress the Tzkora with long, complex greetings. The humans, however, had said only what mattered. "We understand you." To the aliens, that said something deeper. It meant humans were confident, maybe even dangerous, but also rational. They didn't waste words. They didn't try to prove superiority. They simply acknowledged understanding, as if saying, "We see you and we are ready." Commander Enrel made her report to the Tzkora High Council, transmitting the first recorded data of human contact. Her message was cautious but filled with respect. "The species we encountered appears highly developed in technology and warfare," she said in her report, "but their behavior was measured. They responded to peace with understanding, not aggression. This combination makes them unpredictable and fascinating." When the message reached the Tzkora homeworld, it caused a wave of discussion among their leaders. Some believed humanity could become an ally. Others feared what kind of civilization could build a warship that powerful and yet choose not to use it. The High Council decided to wait before making another move. They wanted to study the humans further, from a distance. Meanwhile, the Valiant's crew slowly relaxed. The air no longer felt heavy, and a few quiet conversations began to return to the bridge. One of the officers looked at the stars on the main screen and said softly, "So, that's it? We just met aliens and made peace in one day?" The captain smiled faintly. "It's not peace yet. It's just understanding." He tilted his head. "Do you think they're like us?" The captain took a moment before answering. "No, but I think they're trying to be." As she spoke, the alien ship turned slowly and began to move away, its engines glowing faintly in the distance. No words were exchanged, no promises made, just silent respect between two very different kinds of beings. The humans watched as the ship disappeared into the stars, leaving only a trail of faint green light behind. The captain looked out into the endless dark and whispered to herself, "We're not alone anymore." The crew didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate. Instead, they simply watched, aware that something had changed forever. Far beyond the limits of their home world, humanity had finally stepped into a larger universe. And though they had arrived with the power of a warship, they had also shown something far greater, the ability to hold fire when fear and instinct said otherwise. It was a small act of peace, but in the cold vacuum of space, small acts meant everything. As the Valiant turned back toward its next mission point, the captain made one final note in her log. "First contact complete. Species unknown, behavior peaceful. Humanity remains cautious but open." Then she leaned back in her chair and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the aliens who had found them were reporting back to their own people, perhaps just as uncertain, just as amazed. Two civilizations, born under different skies, had seen each other for the first time. Neither attacked, neither ran. They simply looked, and in that look something new began. And somewhere deep inside the captain's heart, she knew this was only the beginning. Days passed since the first contact, but the feeling of that moment still hung in the air like a quiet echo. The crew of the HMS Valiant went about their routines, but everyone knew the truth. Nothing was routine anymore. They had met another intelligent species. They had looked into the unknown and seen eyes looking back. The captain walked through the ship's main deck early that morning. The corridors were silent except for the hum of machinery. Engineers checked energy readings. Scientists analyzed fragments of the alien signal again and again. Everyone wanted to understand more. A soft voice came through her earpiece. "Captain, The science team has found something unusual in the signal we received. On my way, she said quietly. When she entered the lab, the room was filled with screens showing layers of alien code, patterns of light and tone rearranged again and again. A young technician pointed at one of them. Look here. It's not just a greeting. There's more hidden inside, unlike a signature or a map. The captain frowned slightly. A map? Yes, he said. But it's not to their world. It's to a point in deep space. A neutral zone, maybe. It looks like an invitation. She studied the coordinates carefully. The area was far, but within range. Empty space. No planets, no stations, no signals. Just a quiet region between stars. Maybe they want to meet again, she said softly. The technician nodded. That's what we think. She paused for a long time before answering. Then we'll go. But carefully. While the Valiant prepared for its new course far away, the Tzkora ship Saren 4 was already sending reports back to their High Council. Commander Enrel had been awake for almost 2 cycles, studying the same message that her human counterparts were now decoding. Her report to the Council had been simple. The humans understand us. They did not attack. Their power is extraordinary, but their restraint is greater. The Council members, wise and old, debated endlessly. Some wanted to stay away from humans forever. Others wanted to study them, to learn how such a young race could create something as powerful as the warship they had seen. In the end, they decided on a cautious step, an invitation to a neutral zone away from either side's territory, a place to observe and speak safely. But not all were comfortable with the plan. Commander Enrel's second officer looked troubled. What if they see it as a trap? They might attack. Enrel shook her head slowly. They had their chance already. If they wanted war, we would be dust by now. He looked down. You trust them? I don't, she said. But I want to. 3 days later, the Valiant reached the coordinates. The view outside was breathtaking, a stretch of space filled with glittering dust like golden mist floating between the stars. The crew stared at the display quietly. This place is beautiful, one of the officers said. It's perfect, the captain replied. No planets, no noise, no one else watching. Just then, the radar pinged softly. Contact detected. It's them. The alien ship appeared on the edge of the screen, slowly moving closer. Its green light shimmered through the dust cloud, giving it a ghostly glow. Maintain distance, the captain ordered. No weapons, no sudden movement. As the 2 ships approached each other again, the tension returned, not from fear, but from the weight of the unknown. Inside the alien vessel, Commander Enrel stood ready. Her crew was silent, watching the massive human warship on their screens. It looked even larger than before, its surface calm and dark, showing no signs of aggression. She ordered, "Send a visual signal. Peaceful tone, same as before." The Valiant received it instantly. "Captain, same pattern as last time," said the communications officer. "Looks like another peaceful message." "Respond in kind," she said. Simple acknowledgement. Lights blinked across the human ship's hull, a sequence of blue pulses that matched the alien rhythm. The space between them glowed faintly with the exchange of color. For a few moments there was only silence. No words, no sound, just 2 ships talking through light. Then, something unexpected happened. The alien ship's scanners emitted a narrow beam of energy, soft and harmless, aimed toward the Valiant. The AI reported instantly, unknown scan detected, non-invasive. The captain frowned slightly. "They're scanning us again?" "Probably just trying to learn," the technician said. But before the captain could reply, the Valiant's defense systems reacted automatically again, detecting the scan as a potential threat. Blue light flashed across the hull, weapons powering up in seconds. The same thing that happened before was happening again, only this time stronger. "Deactivate," the captain shouted. "Manual override now." "Trying," the engineer yelled. "The system is responding slow. Automatic defense locked in." The alien ship saw the surge of power and panicked. "Commander," cried one of the Tzkora officers. "Their ship is charging weapons again." Narel's heart pounded. "No, hold position." "They're not firing. Look at their formation, it's defensive, not attack." But her crew was nervous. One wrong move could end everything. For 20 long seconds, both ships glowed with tension, one filled with confusion, the other with fear. Finally, the human engineers managed to cut power. The lights dimmed. The captain took a deep breath. AI, disable auto-defense systems completely. From now on, manual control only. Confirmed, the AI said. Everyone on the bridge exhaled at once. On the alien side, Commander Enrel let out a long breath too. Stand down. They stopped. It was an accident. Her second officer nodded, still shaken. That ship. Their power levels are terrifying. Yes, Enrel said quietly, but so is their control. Later that cycle, after calm was restored, the captain of the Valiant decided to send a message. Not just a simple light pulse this time, but an actual communication. Her voice was calm but steady as she spoke into the microphone. This is the human vessel Valiant. We mean no harm. Our systems reacted automatically as it was not an attack. We apologize. Her words were translated into simple signal patterns transmitted directly toward the alien ship. Minutes passed before a response came. The translation system took time to decode it, but when it did, the meaning was clear. We understand. We are not afraid, the captain smiled faintly. Good, then we can talk. For the first time, a real exchange began, slow, cautious, built on patience and repetition. Simple words. Simple meanings, peace, curiosity, exchange, trust. Each word took time to translate, but the effort itself became the message. Neither side gave up. Hours turned into a quiet conversation made of light and tone, two very different species learning how to speak without words. In the following days, both ships remained in the same region, continuing their silent dialogue. The humans shared basic mathematical patterns, images of the solar system, signs for life and friendship. The aliens responded with their own, maps of distant stars, equations, and drawings of their twin suns. The crew of the Valiant watched each new exchange with growing fascination. It was like two children from opposite sides of the universe trying to learn how to say hello for the first time. But deep inside, everyone knew that this moment carried something much bigger than curiosity. They were shaping the first impression of an entire species. One wrong step could change how the galaxy would see humans forever. The captain spent long hours staring at the stars after every session, thinking about the future. She didn't know if this friendship would last. She didn't even know if they would ever see these beings again after this mission. But she knew one thing for certain. Humanity had just crossed a line it could never go back from. For the first time in human history, they were not the mysterious ones, they were the mystery. On the alien ship, Commander Enrel wrote her private log. The humans are unlike any species we have met. Their technology feels born from struggle. Their words are short, but their silence speaks volumes. They carry the weight of survival in their presence, and yet they choose peace. She looked out the viewport, where the human warship drifted quietly among the stars. Her second officer asked softly, "Do you think they'll return to their world and forget us?" Narelle smiled faintly. "No, they've seen us now. And once a mind opens to the universe, it never closes again." The Valiant's engines began to warm. Their mission was nearing its end. The captain prepared the final transmission. One last message before they left the neutral zone. Her voice was calm. "To the Tuscarora vessel, this is the human ship Valiant. We thank you for peace and understanding. May this be the first of many meetings." The translation sent the message through light and tone. Moments later, a reply came. "We thank you. The stars are wide. We will meet again." The captain stood quietly, looking at the fading glow of their ship. She whispered, "Yes, we will." As the Valiant turned away, the alien vessel slowly drifted into the golden mist, vanishing like a dream. In the dark silence of deep space, humanity had made its first friend, and left them both forever changed. Far away from the quiet stars and the empty silence of deep space, Earth slowly turned under the glow of the sun. From space, it looked peaceful. Oceans like blue glass, green land scattered like pieces of art, white clouds drifting softly above it all. But peace on the surface had never come easily for humans. Back home, humanity was still healing from the scars of the past century. Long before the warship Valiant was built, the world had gone through decades of chaos, wars, hunger, environmental collapse. Nations had fought each other not for pride but for survival. Cities had fallen silent, skies darkened by smoke, and for a while it seemed like humankind might destroy itself before ever reaching the stars. But they didn't. They rebuilt. Slowly, painfully, and with a lesson burned deep into their hearts, that survival is not about strength alone. It's about unity, patience, and learning to rise again. The Earth Alliance had formed during those years, not from ambition, but from desperation. Old rivals laid down their weapons and began building together one step at a time. The Valiant was born from that new spirit. It wasn't just a warship. It was a message. It said to the universe, we are here now. We survived. The ship's design came from a mix of every culture on Earth. Its hull was made from alloys developed in Europe and Asia, its reactors designed by engineers from the Americas, and its AI core, the quiet voice that guided its systems, was built in a small laboratory under the frozen ground of Antarctica. Every part of the Valiant carried the history of a world that had learned how fragile life could be. When the ship had been first launched, crowds had gathered across the planet. People looked up, some crying, some smiling, all feeling the same strange mix of fear and pride. They weren't sending a weapon into space. They were sending their hope. The captain had been chosen not because of rank, but because of her history. She had lived through the hard years when peace seemed impossible. She had seen cities burn and people rebuild them again. Her heart carried both caution and compassion, qualities Earth now valued more than power. When she had stood on the deck during the ship's final test, she'd whispered quietly to herself, "This isn't a warship. It's a promise and that we won't go back to who we were." Now, far away in the neutral zone where humans had met the Tzkora, that same warship floated silently again, its engines resting, its crew deep in thought. Inside the bridge, the captain looked at the stars on the display. They seemed endless, peaceful, yet filled with danger. Every time she saw them, she remembered Earth's sky, the nights before the Alliance, when people were too afraid to look up because of the smoke. She thought of how far humanity had come, from fighting each other to building something capable of touching the stars. But she also knew something else. Survival had changed humans. It had made them stronger, yes, but it had also left something deep inside them. A restlessness, a fear of losing what they had just gained. That fear was what built the Valiant. It wasn't built because humans wanted war. It was built because they were terrified that peace might not last forever. On the alien world of Tzkora, that truth was hard to understand. When Commander Enrel's report reached their council, debates spread across the entire empire. To them, humans were confusing. They had technology meant for destruction, yet they used it with care. Their ship carried the power to shatter planets, yet they used it to say hello. "Why would a peaceful species build such weapons?" asked one of the elder counselors. "Because they've known something we haven't," Narelle answered in her message. "They've known fear, not fear of others and fear of themselves." The council was silent. They had never experienced that kind of history. Their civilization had grown in harmony, guided by reason, never by war. They couldn't imagine surviving through chaos and still choosing peace afterward. For the first time, the Tzkora began to realize that perhaps strength came in many forms. And maybe, just maybe, humans had found a way to turn their pain into progress. On the Valiant, the engineers often joked about the irony of their mission. They were sitting inside a ship with enough power to defend an entire planet. Yet their most important job was to make friends. One of them said with a laugh, "If someone told our ancestors that humans would travel across the galaxy just to have a polite chat with aliens, they'd call it impossible." Another replied, "Yeah, but that's exactly why we had to change. We already know what destruction looks like. It's time to learn what understanding looks like." The captain overheard the conversation and smiled faintly. They were right. Humanity had seen the worst of itself. Now every step they took among the stars had to be better than the last. Late that night, she walked alone through the observation deck. Outside, the stars drifted by slowly like silver dust on black velvet. For the first time in days, the alien ship was nowhere in sight. It had gone quiet, moving back toward its own world, leaving behind only the faint trace of green light. She wondered what they were thinking now. Did they see humans as friends or as a warning? Did they understand that the Valiant wasn't a symbol of power, but of fear? Fear of ever returning to the chaos of the past. As she stood there, she remembered the first time she'd stepped onto the ship years ago. The memory was sharp and clear. The metallic smell of new steel, the hum of reactors, the soft light filling the hallways. It hadn't felt like a ship back then. It had felt like a second chance. Her mentor, an old admiral who had lived through Earth's darkest wars, had told her something she never forgot. He'd said, "One day, we'll meet someone out there who doesn't know what war is. When that happens, remember, our strength isn't in what we can destroy. It's in what we can protect." She smiled faintly at the memory. He had been right. Back on the alien planet, the Council finally came to a decision that Socorro would not hide from the humans. Instead, they would send a message of cooperation, cautious, but genuine. They would invite humanity to an exchange of knowledge, to share what they knew about the stars, energy, and survival. When Commander Enrel received the order, she felt both pride and worry. The humans had proven themselves peaceful for now. But what if others in the galaxy saw them differently? What if not every species they met would be so careful? She recorded another personal log. "Humanity is young, but their fire is old. I see in them a mirror. What we could have been if we had faced chaos instead of peace. They are survivors, and survivors are always full of surprises." On Earth, the Valiant's signals finally reached home. The message traveled for months across space, but when it arrived, it changed everything. The Earth Alliance broadcasted it worldwide. People gathered in cities and villages and floating colonies above the oceans, watching and listening to the first story of alien contact. There were no dramatic images, no explosions, no battles. Just a calm report that humanity had met another civilization and had not been attacked. It was simple, but to the people of Earth it meant hope. For the first time, the sky no longer felt like a mystery, it felt like a door. In classrooms, children looked up at pictures of the Valiant and whispered that they wanted to join the next mission. In universities, scientists debated what kind of life that Socorro might have. And in the quiet corners of the world, the older generation smiled, because they had lived long enough to see humanity change. Back aboard the Valiant, the captain received a reply from Earth. It was short and personal. "Mission success. You've made history. Come home." But she knew their journey wasn't over. Meeting the Socorro had been only the beginning. There would be more worlds, more questions, and maybe one day more dangers. As she sat in her chair watching the stars ahead, she said softly to her crew, "Remember this moment. We were the strangers once. Let's make sure no one else has to be afraid of us." Her voice echoed gently across the bridge, and for a while everyone just sat quietly, feeling the weight of her words. The Valiant turned slowly toward home, engines glowing softly against the dark. Behind them, in the endless stretch of the galaxy, a small part of the universe now knew what humanity was, not conquerors, not invaders, but travelers carrying the lessons of a painful past and the promise of a better future. The stars watched silently as the ship disappeared into the distance, leaving behind only a faint whisper in the void, a story of survival, strength and restraint. And for the first time in a very long time, both Earth and the stars beyond shared the same quiet thought. Maybe peace was possible after all. For days the Valiant drifted in the quiet sea of stars. The alien ship had vanished from view, but the memory of the meeting still hung in the air like invisible smoke. The crew went about their routines, scanning space, checking instruments, running reports, yet no one truly spoke about what had happened. There was a quiet understanding among them. They had just changed history, and they were still trying to understand how. Inside the control room, the captain sat in silence, staring at the data screen in front of her, the stars reflected in her eyes like tiny sparks. Each one reminded her of Earth, of the lights of the cities at night, of people looking up with wonder, unaware that far above them, their world had just made contact with another kind of life. A soft tone interrupted her thoughts. It came from the communications deck. One of the officers looked up sharply, eyes wide. "Captain," he said slowly, "we're getting a signal again." Everyone on the bridge froze. The sound was faint, rhythmic, and not random. It wasn't static. It was language. The captain stood up, her voice calm but firm. "Put it through." The signal was strange, made up of tones and pulses, more like music than speech. But the ship's AI began decoding it quickly, comparing it with earlier data from the first encounter. Within minutes, the strange sounds began to take shape as words on the main screen. The message was short. We mean no harm. We seek to understand. Will you speak with us? The bridge was silent again. For a long moment, no one knew what to say. Then the captain took a slow breath and gave her order. Open a channel. Let's talk to them. At first, the communication was awkward. The two sides had nothing in common. Not language, not gestures, not even expressions. The Tuscarora didn't have mouths or voices like humans. Their speech was a blend of light and vibration. The Valiant systems worked hard to translate it into sound, and even then it came out as soft, echoing tones, like someone speaking underwater, but slowly, patiently, they began to understand each other. On the screen appeared a glowing figure, not a real body, but a projection of the Tuscarora commander. Her form shimmered, translucent, eyes bright like liquid glass. She spoke first. Your vessel carries power beyond what we have seen, she said. Why do you travel armed into the stars? The captain paused before answering. Her face stayed calm, but her voice carried warmth. We don't travel to fight, she said. We travel ready to protect. We come from a world that has seen too much loss. We built this ship not because we wanted war, but because we never want to face one again. The alien was silent, processing the words. Her eyes seemed to flicker softly, as if absorbing the emotion behind them. You fear what you were, she said slowly. Yes, the captain replied quietly. But fear also taught us something important, how to value peace. From that moment, the conversation changed. It was no longer about technology or weapons. It was about understanding. The captain shared stories, not of battles, but of rebuilding. She spoke of the cities that had risen after the Great Wars, of oceans cleaned, of forests growing again. She told them how people had learned to forgive and unite, building the Earth Alliance to ensure no nation ever stood alone again. The Tuscarora listened in silence. They had never known a world where peace had to be rebuilt from ashes. Their civilization had always grown slowly, in balance, guided by calm logic. But hearing about humanity's struggles, the pain, the loss, and the determination, filled them with awe. Your world is fragile, the alien said softly. Yes, the captain replied, but it's beautiful because of that. We fight so it can stay that way. Hours turned into days. The humans and Tuscarora exchanged knowledge, not secrets but ideas. The aliens showed them how their energy systems worked, drawing power from magnetic waves around stars without burning any fuel. In return, humans shared their advancements in medicine and life sciences, how they had cured diseases and extended lifespans using simple nanotech and genetics. It wasn't a trade of power, but of trust. One night, as the conversation paused, a young communications officer on the Valiant asked the captain quietly, Do you think they'll trust us? The captain looked at the screen where the alien ship floated far in the distance, glowing faintly green against the darkness. I think they already do, she said. They're still here, aren't they? On the alien vessel, Commander Enrel, the same officer who had first seen the Valiant, wrote her final report for the council. Her tone was softer now, filled with curiosity instead of fear. Humans, she wrote, are unlike any species we have met. They speak of peace, yet their eyes carry memories of storms. Their machines are built with strength, yet their words are careful and full of restraint. I believe they are dangerous, but not in the way we feared. They are dangerous because they care too much. They will fight not for conquest, but for protection. Her final words were simple. We must learn from them. On the Valiant, the mood had shifted. The tension that once filled the corridors had turned into quiet excitement. People smiled more, even laughed during breaks. They no longer saw the aliens as threats. They saw them as the beginning of something new. One evening, the crew gathered in the observation deck to watch a rare sight. The Tuscarora ship releasing a ring of light as a greeting signal. It was their way of saying friendship. The captain stood among them, arms folded, a small smile on her face. Remember this, she said softly. One day, someone will ask where peace between our worlds began. You'll be able to say, it started here between two ships in the middle of nowhere. The crew clapped quietly. No one cheered loudly. No, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like the end of a long, uncertain journey that had finally found its meaning. Back on Earth, the transmission logs from the Valiant were being received by scientists and diplomats. People listened to the recordings of the first human-alien conversation, and something inside them changed. For generations, people had looked to the stars with fear, imagining invasion or danger. But now, for the first time, the unknown didn't seem frightening. It seemed hopeful. News stations across the planet played short clips of the alien voice, a soft musical tone that seemed almost beautiful. Children began imitating the sounds, pretending to talk to the stars. Artists painted glowing shapes that looked like the Tuscarora, and poets wrote about the silence between two worlds being broken by understanding. The world that had once fought for survival was now dreaming again, dreaming not of wars, but of connections. A few days later, the Tuscarora sent their final message before preparing to return home. It read, "We thank you, travelers from Earth. You showed us that even those born from conflict can choose peace. May your skies always remain bright." The captain smiled when she read it. She sent a short reply, "And may your stars guide you safely, until we meet again." As the alien ship began to fade into the distance, a strange feeling filled the Valiant. It wasn't sadness or joy. It was something deeper. It was the quiet realization that humanity had taken its first real step into the universe. Not as conquerors, but as equals. When the ship finally turned toward home, the captain took one last look at the dark horizon. Her voice was calm as she spoke to her crew. "We've learned something today," she said. "Power doesn't come from the strength of our weapons. It comes from the courage to use them wisely, or not at all." Her words stayed with the crew for a long time. In the logbook, she recorded a final note. "We met those who had never known war. We showed them those who had survived it." And in that moment, between silence and understanding, both sides found something new: respect. As the Valiant moved through the dark sea of stars, Earth waited below, unaware that across the light years, someone was still watching them. Not with fear, but with admiration. The Tuscarora ships had already returned to their homeworld, carrying stories of the humans who built a warship yet spoke with peace. They would tell their children about the strange beings from the blue planet, creatures who had turned pain into progress and fire into friendship. And on Earth, the stars seemed brighter that night. No one could explain why, but maybe somewhere far away another civilization was looking at those same stars and smiling back. The stars were calm again. The Valiant moved slowly through the dark ocean of space, its engines glowing softly like a heartbeat in the night. The alien ship was gone now, leaving behind nothing but memories and a quiet sense of change that filled every corridor of the human vessel. The crew worked in silence, but it was not the same silence as before. It wasn't tense or fearful. It was peaceful. The kind of silence that comes after a storm, when the air feels lighter and every breath reminds you that you've made it through something important. The captain sat in her chair, hands resting on the armrests, eyes fixed on the stars ahead. She didn't need to speak. Her crew already knew what she was thinking. They had just lived through something no human had ever experienced, and the first peaceful meeting between mankind and an intelligent species from another world. No, one on Earth had told them exactly how to act if that moment came. There had been no handbook, no script. They had to trust their instincts and to speak with honesty and calm, even while sitting inside one of the most powerful machines ever built. And somehow, it had worked. Not because of strength, but because of restraint. As the ship drifted closer toward the solar route home, the crew received the official message from Earth. It was simple but powerful. "Congratulations, Valiant. The world is proud. Your story will be remembered for generations." There were cheers on the bridge, quiet laughter, and even a few tears. For months they had been alone, floating between the stars, carrying not just technology but the responsibility of an entire planet. Now they had proof that humanity wasn't alone anymore, and that they had represented Earth with dignity. Later that night, many of the crew gathered in the observation room. The wide glass window showed nothing but endless darkness filled with scattered stars. No one spoke for a while. They just stood there, staring out at the universe that now felt a little less empty. Finally, one of the younger crew members said softly, "Do you think we'll ever see them again?" The captain turned to him and smiled faintly. "I think we will," she said. "Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not in our lifetime. But someday our worlds will meet again, and when that happens, we'll both be ready." Back on Earth, the news of the encounter spread faster than light itself. The world was watching, listening, and wondering. For the first time in history, every nation, every language, Every person shared the same story. A story not about war, not about conquest, but about peace. People who once looked at the stars with fear now looked with curiosity. Children in schools drew pictures of the alien ships, their glowing forms surrounded by bright rings of color. Teachers spoke about the meeting between the Valiant and the Tzkora as the start of a new age of understanding. In cities, people stood together in the streets, watching the broadcast of the captain's report. Her voice was calm and sincere as she described the meeting, the careful exchange of words, and the feeling that humans had finally taken their first true step into the galaxy, not as invaders, but as neighbors. Every time she spoke, her tone carried a simple message. We are not the monsters our history made us. We are the lessons we learned from it. Those words spread across the planet like fire, gentle but unstoppable. Meanwhile, light years away, on the planet of the Tzkora, the reaction was equally powerful. Their people had never faced conflict or destruction. They had never known what it meant to fight for survival. To them, the humans were something strange and beautiful, creatures who had walked through chaos and come out stronger. Commander Enrel's report had become a document of great importance. Scholars studied every word, leaders quoted her in their speeches, and artists began creating works inspired by the strange new beings from Earth. One Tzkora historian wrote, "We once believed peace was born from calm, but now we see that peace can also be born from pain, if one learns to rise above it." The Tzkora began preparing their own message for humanity, an invitation, simple and clear. Let us learn from each other. Let us explore the stars together. It was the first interstellar message ever sent between two civilizations as equals. Back aboard the Valiant, the crew received that transmission months later, just before re-entering the edge of the solar system. The message played softly through the speakers, and as it ended, there was silence again. The kind of silence that comes when something too big for words has just happened. The captain looked at her crew. "We'll carry this message home," she said. "And when Earth is ready, we'll answer it." Her voice trembled just slightly, not from fear, but from emotion. She knew what this meant. Humanity's story had changed forever. From this point on, humans wouldn't just be explorers. They would be participants in something far greater, a galaxy filled with life, wisdom, and shared hope. Weeks later, the Valiant finally reached the edge of Earth's moon. The blue planet below glowed softly against the darkness, its clouds swirling gently like paint on water. No one spoke as they watched it appear on the screen. Some smiled, some cried. It wasn't just home. It was the heart of everything they had fought to protect. As the ship entered orbit, the captain made her final log entry. "We left our world to test our strength. We found something greater, understanding. The universe is not a battlefield. It's a bridge. And today we took the first step across it." Her words were sent to Earth, where they would be recorded in history books, documentaries, and museums. But for her and her crew, it was more than history. It was personal. When the Valiant landed, the world celebrated. There were no parades or fireworks. Humanity had changed too much for that. Instead, there was quiet pride, shared by billions of people who finally felt connected not only to each other, but to something larger. In one of the global addresses, an Earth Alliance leader spoke to the people with tears in his eyes. He said, "The Valiant showed us that peace isn't given. It's earned, by choosing it even when fear tells us not to. Let this be the start of a new chapter, not just for our world, but for all worlds." Those words echoed across every screen, every home, every heart. Years passed. The Valiant was retired from service and placed in orbit above Earth as a monument. People from every country traveled to see it. The great warship that never fired a single shot. Children looked at it through glass domes and listened to the old recordings of the captain's voice. They didn't hear commands or warnings. They heard kindness, patience, and hope. Scientists continued to study the alien technology shared by the Tzkora. In return, humans sent cultural archives, art, and music to their new friends across the stars. Slowly, the two civilizations began to understand each other more deeply, not through power, but through shared dreams. One evening, decades later, an old woman stood by the window of her home on Earth looking up at the sky. It was the captain. Her hair was white now, her face marked by time. but her eyes still carried the same light that once watched the stars from the bridge of the Valiant. Beside her was her grandchild, staring at the same sky. "Is it true?" the child asked softly. "That you talk to real aliens?" The captain smiled gently. "Yes," she said, "but they weren't what you'd expect. They were kind, curious just like us. Do you think they'll come back?" the child asked. The captain looked at the horizon where the first stars of the night began to appear. "Maybe they never left," she said. "Maybe they're watching us just like we're watching them. And one day, when both our worlds are ready, we'll meet again." The child smiled, resting their head against her arm. For a long moment, they just watched the sky together, quiet, peaceful, and full of wonder. Far beyond Earth, on the distant planet of Tizkora, an old commander stood on a high terrace under a glowing sky. Her eyes, bright as ever, looked toward the same stars. She remembered the day she first saw the human ship appear in the darkness, the moment her scanners had failed, and the feeling of fear that turned into admiration. Now, after all those years, that fear was gone. In its place was respect and something close to affection. She whispered softly, in her language of light and tone, "Until we meet again, travelers of Earth." And somewhere, deep in the stars between their worlds, the faint echo of her voice seemed to meet the silent hum of the old human warship still orbiting Earth. Two memories, two histories forever connected. In the end, neither the humans nor the Tizkora remembered the Valiant as a weapon. They remembered it as a bridge, the moment two worlds looked at each other and chose understanding over fear. And in that simple choice, the universe itself seemed to breathe easier.